episode number 36 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. I'm really happy to introduce Dr. Mark Emerson today. Dr. Mark Emerson is a chiropractic physician, author, and internationally recognized professional speaker who specializes in nutrition-based lifestyle medicine and natural treatment methods for patients of all ages. His successful, clinically proven protocols help to empower people to live healthier by preventing, reducing, and resolving chronic progressive health issues and diseases. Dr. Emerson is a health and wellness consultant to the Four Seasons Resort in Maui, where he designed and leads the Wellness Your Way program and the private retreat lifestyle medicine programs. He also provides expert health and wellness consulting to individuals, groups, companies, restaurants, and hotels around the world. Additionally, Dr. Emerson provides private health and wellness programs to entertainment, celebrities, and Fortune 500 CEOs, and has been a health consultant to players and personnel of the NFL, PGA Tour, USA Track and Field, and NCAA. As a featured speaker in the expertise of lifestyle medicine, emphasizing the direct link between diet and disease, Dr. Emerson has lectured professionally in conjunction with the world's leading health experts, such as Andrew Weil, Deepak Chopra, Michael Clapper, Michael Greger, Julian Whitaker, and Howard Murad, and has been featured on the documentary Heal. As a continuing medical education provider, Dr. Emerson has taught thousands of doctors and other allied healthcare providers evidence-based clinical nutrition protocols and blood lab interpretation to aid in the prevention and reversal of chronic progressive diseases such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, inflammatory and metabolic disorders. Dr. Emerson offers his health and wellness retreats, which deliver a complete lifestyle recharge in luxurious settings around the world. With renowned medical and nutrition experts and award-winning culinary chefs, Dr. Emerson's health and wellness immersions provide a life-changing experience to assist his guests in maintaining lifelong health. In his personal life, Dr. Emerson enjoys a healthy lifestyle by practicing what he preaches. He has utilized a whole food diet for over 30 years and raised 4 healthy and athletic children with nutrition as the foundation to healthy living. He is a strong supporter of organic foods and local farmers. So this is part 2 of the episode that I had with Dr. Emerson last week. And I'm going to start from a little before I cut it off last week so that you know the conversation and where it came from. Because like I said before, it was very hard to cut it off because it was a real continuous conversation. But I really wanted you to absorb the information and not have the whole interview on because there was a lot of great information that he shared and I wanted to split it up into 2. Yeah, and it's interesting because we talk about hope. A lot of women that are going on the fertility journey, that's the one thing they always say, I just want hope again. And It really comes down to the fact that the body is not as concerned about reproduction. It's more concerned about survival.
Yeah, totally. That's it in a nutshell. And we look at bone loss, osteoporosis is a classic example. Obviously drinking milk doesn't do it. And so the body does this, essential, non-essential game. And so it's like you're getting some bone loss, but your body's liberating calcium, magnesium, phosphorus. It needs that to run electrolytes and neuroconductivity. So the brain, the heart, the liver, the kidneys all need those elements. So because of the toxic diet, you're really inflamed. So you have a nice reserve of calcium in the bone. So then the body goes, okay, do I need heart functionality or bone loss? Heart functionality. So, right? So you can live without a femur, but you can't live without a heart. And so the body will always go essential, non-essential. And this is
Yes.
how we get this chronic progressive. And fertility, you're absolutely right. That's going to be lower on the list. It may be higher on our list, our want list, but from a
Mm-hmm.
physiological level, from an instinctual, innate level, it's going to move down the list, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I work with gals with fertility and males with, men with fertility issues too. One of
Mm-hmm.
the most important things is we have to correct your physiology,
Yeah.
and so the approach is always going to be real similar of if you're manifesting symptomatology of dysfunction, then you have dysfunction. I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I think that's the biggest key. And unfortunately, there's a lot of, there's a lot of industries that have kind of expanded or cropped up. I mean, the one that drives me nuts is anti-aging, which
Mhm.
is kind of an oxymoron within itself. But when I look at the anti-aging market, it's basically products, procedures, right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to what are we really seeing in the United States? And I'm blessed enough to lecture all over the world, and so I see other cultures. And what I see in the United States is we're not looking at normal aging; we're looking at accelerated aging, right?
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a
So
good
that's
point.
really what we're looking at. And then we've pedaled to the metal and burned out a lot of our resources, and then
Mm-hmm.
we're grasping at something quick to give us the anti-aging solution.
Yeah.
But the
We like
solution
the quick fix.
Yeah, but the solution would be the same. So, okay, slow down the accelerated aging, slow down the degeneration, reverse, and guess what happens? You start looking better, feeling better. And you can see this, and I'm sure you've seen it in your own patients. You get someone on a 6-month plan, 12-month plan, and they are dynamically a different human being a year later.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And
Completely.
number one, on a cellular level, they're definitely a new person.
It's true.
We have this miraculous ability that our cells turn over. We get new cells. We have a new opportunity every day, every week, every month to be somebody new
Mhm.
on a physiological level. And that's the beauty of how healing happens. And that's why you see someone dynamically change
Yeah.
within 6 months to a year. And to the pregnancy point, right? Remember when gals get pregnant, they have that pregnancy glow, right?
Yes.
Well,
Uh-huh.
there's that physiological wonderfulness that we see.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you think also about epigenetics because you're turning on and turning off
Mhm.
genes based on your diet and your lifestyle, everything that you do, and your thinking, I think too, and what you say, because your ears are listening. All that comes into play.
Absolutely, and I think you really hit it on a big one. A big part of my lifestyle medicine programs, or PTC, is what we call present time consciousness. So,
Mhm.
if you're not in present time consciousness, then you are doing somewhat of a disservice to your body, to your spirit, to your health, and it's difficult. It is. We're always worried about what happened yesterday and what's going to happen tomorrow, but
Mhm.
really, what you have is right here, right now, actually, and
Yeah,
the power of that is that's where all the magic's going to happen because
absolutely.
sitting from a physiological level on a cellular level immune system function, your body's really not your body doesn't care what happens 10 years from now. It's really dealing with what's happening right now, and
Yeah.
that's that present time consciousness.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that you were saying before, you were talking about how we really burn ourselves at both ends, and I'll tell you, it's interesting because I used to be in the corporate world. I used to work as an architect, and I
Mm.
burned myself out, and I remember going to an acupuncturist, and that's where I made the switch, and I said, "This is what I wanna do because it has so much more meaning than what I'm doing right now," and I just felt like it would feed a lot more of my soul and the meaning of my
Right,
life. And when I was an architect, in order to do well, I had to burn the candle at both ends. We were promoted, given bonuses by ignoring our self-care in a sense. I mean, that's what we were learning is normal. Like, to
right,
spend crazy hours there, that is how we were rewarded. Like, we're doing a great job. And and, like, t and really what that came down to for me is put self-care in the back burner,
right.
and I remember thinking, "That is just not how I wanna live my life." It was one of the reasons I wanted to switch, but you think about the culture, it's everywhere. Everybody's getting rewarded for that.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know how much in the corporate world or in manufacturing, you name it, I've pondered this thought a lot. But as far as, are we built for all this amount of work? And I'd have to say we probably are.
Hmm.
However, what if we made these simple lifestyle changes, right? So even though you're working maybe 50, 60, 70 hours a week, what if we're eating a really good diet and we're spending, 20 minutes a day doing X, maybe meditation or some
Yeah.
stretching or relaxation, right?
Which actually a lot of corporations are including, which I think is great.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
I think while and I'm not an advocate for 80 hours of work a week, but the point being is we probably could do it, but the model at which we're doing it is so flawed, right? Because what do we reach for? The triple shot latte to stay up, the Red Bull after lunch, we choke down a quick, highly refined garbagey lunch and dinner, or we don't even get to eat. And so over time, as you see, as you're stepping on the gas that much, we're going to be depleted.
Hmm.
And I see it a lot with people who have to travel, and travel is difficult, right? Because you're typically always eating either on an airplane or in a hotel or out, and that's hard. I mean, it
It
really
is.
is. It's hard on the body. But I think the big thing is the takeaway I try to snapshot for my patients is say, look, your body, regardless of what it's dealing with, can handle it if we give it some support.
That's
And,
that's such a good point. It's true.
because you know why, we've seen people like in the worst possible scenarios, right? Worst prognosis, basically like go ahead and go home and die, and they didn't buy into that. So they made the changes. They had the wherewithal to correct the ship and get the healing mechanisms going, and they got into remission. And then not only that, but they're thriving 5 years down the road. So when you see kind of the worst cases get better, I always
Hmm.
have a lot of positive thoughts for people who aren't to that point yet. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, if she can do it, and we basically threw her on the scrap heap and wrote her off, she's better. You can too. And I think that's what a lot of it has to do with, is the belief that
Hmm.
we can get better. Because what happens is it's the depression and anxiety that goes on with feeling sick and tired
Yeah.
and chronically ill. Anxiety and depression just starts to dovetail right in it, which is another symptom of the body being out of sorts, the spirit being down. It's I don't think anxiety and depression, when I see it, the majority of people who have chronic conditions also have a level of depression. So to me, it goes hand in hand. But once again, if we separate everything and try to look at it individually, like, oh, you have depression and you have diabetes and you have this, then we're not doing a service to the patient. You know, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
mean, it makes sense that you're depressed if your body's falling apart. So instead of putting you on a med and trying to get, change the symptoms, let's try to get your whole system fixed. Let's try to get you feeling better, improving, working at a higher level metabolically, mentally, physically.
Without a doubt. And I think that a lot of times when people are feeling these emotions, I always believe that emotions are there as a compass to let you know you're falling off path and you got to
Absolutely.
go back and change it. And so usually you feel off when you're not aligned with what you're supposed to do physically, mentally, emotionally, and every level.
Right. Right. No, I agree. And that's, I've always looked at depression. To me, depression is, uh, to me, it, depression is anger spread thin, right? That to me is kind of what we do with anger. So we have these anger and resentment, which is a really heavy energy, right? It's a really burnout one, and you can't stay anger and resentment a long time, right? It's so intense. So what we do is we
Yeah.
spread it out thin, and we go through our own committees in our mind. We spread it out, and then it becomes depression. It becomes this just overall gray cloud or wet blanket over us. So I
Mhm.
think part of it too is, in a lifestyle medicine point of view, is really trying to get our patients to let go of a lot of things. And
Mhm.
I'm not talking about responsibilities necessarily, but I'm
Mhm.
talking about letting go of those resentful anger, because they don't serve you, right?
No, they don't.
But what we do know is they stimulate certain chemicals in the body that are degenerative and cause defect to cells. You're talking about epigenetics,
Hmm.
telomere lengthening, etc. We do know that anger and resentment and all these type of feelings that we harbor affect our immune system and our body's ability to heal.
Absolutely, they do. Yeah.
So it's all part of it. When we treat human beings, our idea is we want to treat the human being, mind, body, and spirit. And a lot of it is some patients can't go there in certain areas. Okay, that's fine. But I always find there's something to work on. And as we get improvement in one area, it then
Mhm.
stimulates kind of this desire to keep going.
It does, and sometimes we have, patterns, that's how we treat people. So we don't treat the symptoms, we treat the patterns in Chinese medicine, and many times our teachers always said, "Don't try to you're gonna see a million patterns, don't treat every pattern. Look at the most alarming one, treat that first, and somehow if you treat that well, it's gonna cascade into healing other patterns simultaneously."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and we know that from just basic conditions, right? So, take diabetes type 2, for instance, which is all diet and lifestyle related. I reverse a lot of, we resolve diabetes type 2 all day long in my practice. But what's interesting is approximately 80% of diabetic type 2 patients will die of a cardiovascular event. And
Mhm.
why is that? The inflammation that's created with the high glucose is damaging the arteries, which damages eyesight and peripheral nerves, and etc. But the point being is no one disease is independent. It's always a collaborative effort to bring someone down, and that's what it is. All these diseases, Alzheimer's, dementia, they're all chronic progressive disease that have inflammation as a foundational component. So when I see a patient with diabetes type 2, I'm already knowing that, oh, there's a good chance you already have advancing cardiovascular disease. And if you
Mm,
have cardiovascular disease, you probably already teed up for dementia and Alzheimer's, right? Because they're progressive disease, which lead one into the other and the other, or the autoimmunity. Same thing, the Hashimoto's, the thyroiditis, then what happens is we start getting chronic inflammatory response in the bowels and constipation. Then we get polyps. And so it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a lot of commonalities here, but it makes sense. The body is going to break down systemically. It's not going
yeah.
to break down in an isolated point, right?
Absolutely, and it almost feels like, inflammation's like the body screaming for help.
Absolutely, that's exactly what it is doing, and it does its best. It does. I mean, that's why I run blood labs on patients all the time, and basically you're looking at, boy, you're on fire, and though
Yeah.
we don't see any um, pathology barking right now, you're on the path for it, and that's what I think we have to be blatantly honest with our patients. Is realistic of looking of like, look, you're on a trajectory for this. I suggest you don't wait. But remember, modern medicine is all acute based. As a whole, Western medicine, we do a terrible job on chronic progressive diseases because we don't
Mhm.
really have any methodology for it. So what we do is we wait till a chronic progressive disease manifests into an acute condition, right?
Mm,
Such as
yeah,
a heart attack, right? So at what point in time the patient had a heart attack, but at what point in time did they have cardiovascular disease? Oh, over the
right.
past 30 years. But
Yeah.
so one of the most dangerous phrases I see in healthcare is you get a blood lab, you look, and what does your doctor say? Typically, oh, everything looks normal.
Mhm,
Well, normal doesn't necessarily mean healthy, right? So
mhm,
normal means normal, meaning what that is I decode it for patients is what that means is you don't have any real major red flags that we can do intervention on you today. So that's
right.
really pretty much what that means. But why did the patient typically have the blood drawn? Well, they're constipated, they got low back pain, they got chronic headaches, they're chronically
Exactly. Yeah,
fatigued.
right.
So maybe that is quote normal, but I wouldn't
Right,
say it's healthy. And so
exactly.
we're going to take a different approach with patients from that standpoint because I guarantee all those symptoms we just talked about, left untreated and left unresolved, will be something 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Absolutely.
Absolutely, 100%. We have the same thing, the same exact thing. I have take blood deficiency, for example. So I'm trying to explain it to patients when they've never heard of it before. They're like, does that mean anemia? And I'm like, that's anemia after years of chronic blood deficiency.
Sure.
But before it even shows up in the blood work, you're deficient. You can be, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and this is knowing how the body works, right? So I give an example on blood labs. Like, okay, look, let's say 0 to 5 is the range, okay, and every year you go get a blood lab, and year one you were a 1, and then year 2 and 3 you were a 3, and year 4 you're a 4 or 4.5 or 5, you're still in the range. And
Right.
so all along you were told, oh, everything's normal, everything's normal. But in
Yeah.
reality, from a physiological level, from a innate level, your body is losing this battle. So on year 6, you're now a 7 on that scale of 0 to 5, and they go, "Oh, you got diabetes," and
Right. Right.
you just wonder, wait
All
a
that
minute,
time.
right? Because the body doesn't lie, right? You know, we
Yeah.
we love to minimize our when we all do it, myself included. No, I'm okay. I feel all right. But your body doesn't lie. The blood doesn't lie. That's why I'm a big fan of blood labs. Your
Sure.
blood doesn't
Yeah.
lie. Your blood is always going to tell the story. And
Yes.
so I think that the key is looking. We got to get past the acute model of like, oh, everything's a red flag to, ooh, what's really going on the underneath, right? What's going on this chronic level?
Hmm.
And I think once we approach that, and it's like anything else, if someone is really stressed, right, and freaking out, there was a long period of time where they were kind of sub stress, or you know what I mean.
Yes.
So
True.
it's
Right.
building, it's
It's a buildup.
building.
It's a buildup.
Exactly.
It's huge. And then by the time it gets so built up and you can't hold it, that's when you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, that's when you
Gotta
have the
do something.
meltdown.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what we want to try to avoid. Yeah, I mean, definitely, our approach is, unfortunately, in our world, we get a lot of folks who are at that point, which is fine,
Hmm.
but we have to, really give them an eye opener of saying, okay, look, we got to get you out of this crisis mode first, so then we can get back to building the house, and that's a
Exactly.
lot of it, right?
Yeah, totally. And so, I love all of what you're saying, and I would love to know any stories of transformations that you've seen in people just from implementing all of this.
Oh, I think. Yeah, there's so many. I mean, we work with so many prediabetes and diabetes, which is really a systemic disorder. I mean, it's a metabolic disorder, so people
Hmm.
just don't feel well. And I think the nice thing is within 8 weeks, depending on how bad it is, within 8 weeks to 12 weeks, we get that resolved. That changes their life night and day.
Hmm.
Cardiovascular disease is a good one. I work with a lot of ED, and the erectile dysfunction is such a bummer because it's never the true story is never told.
Hmm.
So really, ED is it's a canary in the coal mine for cardiovascular disease. So any male that shows up in front of me and says, oh, I got ED and I'm on meds for it, like, you got cardiovascular disease. And so
Hmm.
when you think about it, cardiovascular disease is basically a crippling of the arteries of the cardiovascular system, which drives blood to every cell of our body.
Right,
We
right.
think of heart, right? Of course, but the coronary arteries are quite large compared to the penile arteries. And so
Hmm.
when you just think about it, which ones are going to occlude first? Well, of course, the smallest arteries are going to occlude first. That's why in
Right.
diabetes
That
type
goes back
2,
to the same thing that we were talking about before. It's, what's more important.
yeah, absolutely. And, you get, so how do we do it? We're going to approach it from cleaning up your whole body. And guess
Hmm.
what? The ED goes away. But even just to some, more important, the cardiovascular issues
Hmm.
go away. So guess
Yeah.
what? Now you have more energy and you're feeling good, and that low back pain's gone, and then your headaches are gone, and you just feel you're sleeping better and all that. And why? Is because we cleaned up your whole arterial system. And
Hmm.
remember, we're only as good as our blood flow.
Right.
right? So
Absolutely. You needed that oxygen
we need
everywhere.
that oxygen and the nutrients involved. And so we're not
Yeah.
only, how clean are our pipes, meaning the arteries, but how clean is the blood flow going through it. And it's a
Hmm.
fascinating thing. You can see a gasoline commercial, Exxon, and they talk about how clean their fuel is, right? And how it helps clean your engine. But we totally forget that when we're thinking about our body, and we eat
True.
all these highly toxic, highly inflammatory, garbage foods that basically just infiltrate our blood with sludge, so to
Yep.
speak, right? And
Yeah.
it's dirty, it's full of toxins, bacteria, chemical compounds, and all that stuff is just bathing into our tissues. And
Mm.
over time, here we go. We get a manifestation of
Scary.
symptomatology.
Yeah, it's crazy, crazy. And so I always go over this because I love nutrition. I love having nutritionists on here. And I always like to talk about the troublemakers. What are the biggest troublemakers?
Food wise,
Yeah.
well, we've entered just a weird time in on our time on Earth. When
Hmm.
you look at our diet, we're eating a diet that has never been seen on the face of the earth before.
Hmm.
So, and that's what's interesting when I hear the arguments about, oh, our ancestors did this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what our ancestors didn't do is they didn't live on a chemical diet. So,
Yeah.
everything is highly refined, fake, from the sugars to the colorings to, I mean, we don't eat a lot of food anymore. And I think that's the biggest thing. And so, you go back to the gluten issue. I don't necessarily, what happened to our wheat supply in the United States is it just got poisoned. Even though there's
Hmm.
technically no genetic modified wheat, the problem is the glyphosate use in the
Right.
United States is just insane.
It
So
is.
I don't really think there's a gluten intolerance. I think what it is the food has been poisoned. You
Hmm.
can't get glyphosate out of a food once it's heavily saturated. And so
Hmm.
we're seeing the microbiome being killed off by what? By the jobs of those chemicals. They're antibacterial, antifungal, they're designed to get in there and kill things off, but they're not designed to be in our stomach. So
Right.
because I travel to Italy a lot. I speak in Italy, and I look at Italy. I'm like, well, they don't have a lot of gluten issues. Not to
True.
mention, if they did, Italy would just crack off and sink into the Mediterranean. Can you imagine Italy without
No, I
protein?
can't.
So,
No.
so, but what do you see about their food supply? Oh, okay, wait, they're not using glyphosate on by the millions of pounds that we are. So
Yeah.
I think that's a lot to do with it. Our food is now poisoned.
Hmm.
We factory farm everything, which is just insane from a
Hmm.
standpoint of, and these words have been, kind of bastardized and hijacked too, like free range and all that. And then you go and look, you're like, oh, it's not really, it's still factory farming. And so when you look at how our food supply is delivered to us in the format, what it took to get it in that format, it's no longer a real natural whole food diet. It's not.
Right.
And I think we need to be real honest about that. And I'm real honest with our patients. That's why I don't do the brands. They're like, oh, you want me to be, paleo, or you want me to be vegetarian. I'm like, no, what I want you to
Mm.
do is I want you to eat whole foods,
Hmm.
real whole foods. And
Yeah.
these are the things that throughout time have always gotten people better. Think
Hmm.
about medicinally, thousands of years ago, it was food. It was food. It
Yeah.
was herbs, right? It's food and
Yep.
herbs. You know,
Absolutely.
200 years ago, same thing. And so here we are today. The hardest part, though, as I say, is you have to maneuver through the cornucopia of crap that's on the market.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing. I was just going through it. I just lectured last week and going through this. I put up a fiber bar, a fiber one, or I can't remember who cares what the brand is, but it's a fiber
Hmm.
bar, and
Yeah.
it's advertised as a fiber. It's oat and it has chocolate chips in it. And you go through it, it has like 7 sources of sugar, 6 sources of fat,
Hmm.
and coloring and blah, blah, blah. And they're touting 9 grams of fiber. So then I threw up the next slide, which was something that's maybe a better alternative. 1 cup of raspberries has
Mm-hmm.
8 grams of fibers, high antioxidants, phytonutrient, no
Wow.
artificial colors, sweeteners, no sugar. You know what I mean?
So
So
simple.
we're confused. I think a lot of it has to do. We're confused, and now we got crazy things coming out too. Stuff grown in a lab. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm. I
and
heard about that.
and it's going to be a big money maker, no doubt. Which means what? It's going to be on CNN and People Magazine, and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be everywhere in your face as the next greatest, healthier. Oh, it's plant based, and I'm like, I don't know,
Right,
man.
but it's in plastic containers with
Yeah,
phthalates and all that. Yeah, it's absolutely.
yeah.
That's I think really comes down to the fact that money drives too much of the motivation for all these companies, and that's the problem.
Sure.
Is
Yeah. Yeah.
that really is what it comes down to, is just getting people to really be smarter and see through that.
Right. And the thing that worries me is with the GMO thing um, fortunately, the majority of GMO stuff is grown for, livestock or oil production and things that we can avoid by choosing. But I'm really worried about the pesticide use, the glyphosate. Since GMOs have entered into the fabrication of our food manufacturing, the rate and the poundage, the millions of pounds have exponentially increased. And that's
Mhm.
what worries me more than anything. I mean, that because you can't really get that out of the food supply, because not only is it in the food supply, it's in the water, right?
Yeah, oh my
You know what I
god.
mean? So it's
Scary.
kind of exponentially going everywhere. Whereas
Yeah.
whether they label GMOs or not, you can kind of avoid them. But I'm just worried that as we continue with this insane amount of glyphosate usage, we're going to be at a critical part where all of our food supply is tainted. But I can tell my patients don't worry, don't fret it.
Yeah.
You got to stay positive, because
Yeah.
I still believe the miraculous ability of the human being. Right? We have a
Yeah.
miraculous immune system.
We do. We do. We really do it. It's incredible because I love saying this. People are probably sick of me saying this, but the whole thing with the multiple personality disorder, how one person can have diabetes and another personality comes off and they don't. And it just shows that, like, wow, that's the same physical body, but your mind is so important in what you identify with. So I believe that's a huge aspect. I believe healing can come in so many different ways,
Oh, absolutely,
you know?
absolutely, and I don't think there's a market on or a monopoly on anyone, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm always open to whatever patients are doing. Um,
Hmm.
that's helping them to influence their healing. I mean, it's like, great, so,
Yeah.
like, patients will tell me some things and I'll be like, whew, I don't know. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm doing the labs. I'm looking at the progression. They're getting better and they're
Yeah.
happy. And so, you
That's
know
all
what?
that matters.
Absolutely. And whether
Yeah.
it be faith based or, it doesn't matter.
It
Um,
really doesn't. It's true.
and I think the intention is there. I think that's it. If the intention is there to
Mhm.
heal, right,
Mhm.
then you're on your path. And I'm not going to tell you what the path is going to look like totally. From a dietary structure, I work with a lot of the protocols that where we get the results quick, and that's the thing. So I don't really vary a lot of the dietary protocols, because you know what, that's the old thing: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
Yeah.
we know certain foods have a positive influence and certain foods have a negative influence. And what I've found through 30 years is, as we put the patients on this path with this positive influence foods, they get better. That's the
Yeah.
beauty. And then however they want to go about it, with being faith based, or a lot of spirituality, or even just orneriness.
Mhm.
I get people who are ornery and they're like, no, I'm going to get better no matter what. And you're like, okay. And they
And they
do.
yeah. And so you offer a lot of health and wellness retreats. So
Yeah.
can you share that with the listeners?
Sure. Yeah. The health and wellness retreats, to me, that's really where it's like, summer camp kind of,
Mhm.
that's where you come and you spend, every day with my staff and myself. I'm there and we do culinary. So we go through foods, we go through the, cooking classes, we go through, um, basically kind of seminars based on, it's all tailored to what each individual has going on, right? So if it's like, for instance, if we're working with someone with PCOS, we're going to be real heavy influencing on how does this occur, how do we get better, how do we resolve it, how did you get here in the first place? And then so each one is really tailored to the individual that's at the retreat. But the bottom line is it's, I have found we have to teach our patients how to live better or how to live more healthy. Because once again, healthy is not a bumper sticker. It's not a brand
Yeah.
you go buy. It's something you do.
Yes.
Which means everybody, regardless of demographics, can do it.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's our nature. It really is. I think once we get into that, we start to enjoy really fresh food. We start to develop a taste for it again, because it really is something that corresponds with our cells and
Of course.
our
I mean,
being.
we're made for it.
Yeah.
And nobody came out of the womb, jonesing for a artificially flavored, candy bar. That
Yeah.
just doesn't
No.
resonate. So, we
Absolutely
had to
not.
be trained, and that's a big part of my programs of teaching people. Look, you had to train yourself to get into this bad shape, right? This wasn't innate. You're not driven this way. So over time, you got convinced, and through whatever and habitual practice, you're here. So what we need to do is just reverse that and get you back to really nature, so to speak. We want to get you back to what your body is driven for, what your body is looking for. And so again, when you go back to that potato chip banana, watching Netflix, you're
Right.
not innately driven to the potato chips. You had to be trained and addicted to, to knock back a whole bag of chips. But
Right.
innately, you'll take one or two bananas, you'll be good. A bowl of strawberries, you'll be good, right?
Yeah.
I have never had a patient come up to me and I'm like, "Oh man, you look like hell. What happened to you?" "I did 6 pounds of broccoli last night." It just doesn't happen, right? It just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. So that's the beauty.
Right.
We have a lot of innate mechanisms built in for us, and then once we get the appropriate information and protocols, nature does its work.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So where can people find you?
My website, docemerson.com, it's DOCEMERSON.com is on there. And then I have a book, my book coming out in a couple weeks. It'll be on Amazon and iTunes, print and digital. It's called The Healing Protocols. And so really what that's a culmination of basically many years of clinical work of trying to give people an understanding of how it happens, how you reverse it, and then some tips and tools of going forward. And I wrote the book for this. Listen, I'm a bit firm believer in keep it simple, stupid, right? So that KISS
Oh, I
principle,
like that. I like it. Yeah. That's
it, because what I found after 30 years is if we use the KISS principle, we get the best results. I get a lot of people who want to philosophically talk about things, and we do for hours on end, and then guess what? Nothing got implemented. So I'm like, whoa, back up, do this. And then guess what? That's how we get to crawl, to walk, to run.
Yeah.
And that's what the book is all about. And so basically anybody, if you give yourself a good 4 to 8 weeks of really successful protocols, regardless of what's going on, you'll dramatically improve. And a lot of these issues will just simply go away. Endocrine functionality takes a little longer, but I think just giving people the understanding of this will take some time. I use a month to a year ratio that seems to work out with a lot of people. So if you've had something for a year, then give yourself a good month of really being clean. So for instance, you've been struggling with this condition 10 years, give yourself 10 months. Allow yourself 10 months, which means in a week, if it isn't dramatically better, don't go jumping ship. You've had this 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so I think the realistic ability is important because when you go back to what our patients are used to, they're used to taking a medication for 7 to 10 days, or I got to be on this for the rest of my life. And neither of those formats are curative. They don't treat causation. They just treat symptoms.
Right.
So
I'm looking forward to reading this. This sounds
oh,
great.
good. Thank you. Yeah, I'll let you know when it should be out next couple. It's all actually in the final formatting of all the digital content. So Amazon it'll be on Kindle and then iTunes for iBooks, which I think both. I'm still old school, so it'll be a print one too. But
So definitely send me the links. I'll put that in the episode notes so that people can find it easy.
no, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I think a lot of it is if we can deliver material that people can use. I don't want it to be overly complex because it doesn't have to be. In the cooking, this is where we do in our programs, lifestyle medicine programs, our immersions, is teaching people how to cook. And the funniest thing is they come in with an expectation of overcomplicated.
Yes, that
And
always happens.
yeah,
It happens to me
and
all the time.
I get it.
Whenever I do something new, I'm like always complicating it in my mind.
Yeah, well, and it can be. I mean, you watch a cooking show on TV, and it's like a
Uh-huh.
2-hour ordeal to like come up with like, oh man, I'm not doing that. But
Yeah,
real food, whole foods, simple foods are just that. They're easy.
simple,
When you're
easy.
working
Yeah,
with 6 ingredients that are all just sitting there on your counter, oh, this is easy, right?
right.
And I'm also, I know how working people, time can be short. I'm okay with
Yeah,
using, organic, frozen, or even canned things, as long as it's a BPA free can. I go through all that in the book. But the point being is okay, kind of, pick your battles, right? So if you're using something canned that's organic and in water and it's a really reputable company, use it because it'll cut down significantly on your ability to make a good meal and also your excuses, right? Ideally.
yes, this is true. It's always that excuse.
Right, right.
Awesome. Well, this was amazing information, and it was so great to have you on.
Well,
I really enjoy speaking with you and listening. I really believe in a lot of what everything that you're saying,
thank you.
and it's just based on logic. I
Yeah,
think it's wonderful.
that's kind of the thing. I mean, I almost wanted to title the book "Keep It Simple, Stupid," but you don't want to, you don't want to, you don't want to
Offend
offend
me.
anyone. Well, it is something. I mean, I think we have so much smoke blown at us that it confuses us, and we're like, "Oh my God, to heal this is going to take so much." Blah blah blah. You'd be amazed how simple and step by step easy it is to change your life and heal your life. And when you are feeling better, your whole outlook on life changes, regardless of what's going on. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I love that. I just love that. And if that's not hope, I don't know what is. I mean, and if anything, especially because a lot of the listeners are going through fertility challenges, they're going to doctors, they're hearing horrible news,
Yeah.
which that's a whole other thing that I could go into a whole episode
Sure.
about,
Sure.
because, I do feel like it's a mental hex to be told things that aren't necessarily true, or they don't know for sure 100%.
Right.
And it gets into the psyche. But, to be able to hear this creates so much hope
Well,
for
good.
so many
Thank you.
people, and I think that that's just wonderful, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're very
Yeah.
welcome. And I'm very glad to be a part of the show. I think, I remind patients in a nutshell is, look, sacred cows is what a lot of our healthcare is based on. And what do we know about the sacred cows? As time goes on, most of them are wrong. So just remember, your body has this ability to heal, and that's what we know throughout time. Otherwise, we would
Mhm.
never be sitting here in 2019. If you think about
Mhm.
what our civilizations have occurred, have what they've had to deal with
Yeah.
throughout time, that should tell you. So don't make it overly complex. Get your
Mhm.
body healthy and let then nature happen, right? Because I think with the infertility thing is a classic example. When I look at people with a lot of infertility, when I'm seeing a lot of those patients, they have so many underlying things that no one has even talked about or addressed, and that's
Yeah.
more than likely where the dysfunction's coming from.
Exactly.
As we talked about, you eloquently put, your body's not going to really worry about reproduction when there's so many other things going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I thank you so much for coming on the show. This
You're
was
very welcome.
great.
Thank you,
Awesome.
and look forward to talking to you again.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to leave a review. Reviews are everything to podcasters. You can find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com. and please be on the lookout for my online course and program. This course has emerged from everything that I've been using for the fertility program I now offer at my office. I wanted to consolidate all of my suggestions and coaching and put it into a form that anyone can purchase and use. It was important for me to encompass key fertility health factors as well as guide you in implementing changes in your routine that are shown to boost fertility while being realistic and user-friendly. I will be offering this course with and without coaching. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com, where you can find the subscription form. I thank you so much for listening in and hope you have a beautiful day.